No, it's good. Yeah, good. So anyone have question for any speakers? Oh, thank you. Yeah, I will go first.
Hey, great talk. So I had a question for Monica. So I was just wondering your opinion on just WorldCoin and their approach to.
Working with them.
You're working with them?
I know it is very controversial, but there is a party in Paraguay that we're working. They actually have multiple of those scanners at a lot of the coffee shops, and it's really interesting that WorldCoin has a very stable presence in LATAM because of the inflationary nature of their of the currencies, but people are being paid in cryptocurrency. It's actually being used, so there are a lot of onboarding coming from LATAM through WorldCoin. So we are working with them.
I just have a follow-up. So I don't know, like I know they rebranded, so maybe there's some changes, but I've had concerns due to like just the past, especially in Africa, how they collect data. There was an MIT review article as well that was published a few years ago. So just wondering, are there any changes and just how the biometric data is
The reason why I connected with them is because the biometric data nowadays belongs on your phone. It's actually encrypted on your phone and it doesn't leave your phone and it's not recorded anywhere else. So your retina information, like that is why everyone should own their own privacy and their own identity, and that is very that is very integral to our project, and we actually made sure that everyone keeps their like identity intact, and they actually own it themselves, and it's just an encryption that's sent over.
Any more questions? Coming.
So again, the question is for Monica. So from what you just discussed, one of your work will be involving surveying some fashion, correct? And I'm wondering, like in terms of people reach out to you, like have a certain sentiment, want to find out through survey, through community participation. Usually, what kind of topic at the current state that you usually will find more interesting? Is there a way to judging like whether that kind of topic likely will have some traction, and that will be interesting to know?
I think it could be for anything. Like Prolific actually brings in like medical research, marketing research, like or even just pure academic research. So anything goes. It's more about just making sure our sample is actually representative of the world population when we have our output.
Let me just rephrase. Did exact question that right now in my mind about like for example, currently there's this is more not for like well, let me just state the issue first. So right now in biological research, there's face a lot of funding issue. Particular government like a kind of shut down some programs. So there's a lot of IP asset out there in some fashion. So I'm thinking, well, if there's a situation like this, if we could tokenize some of this asset into a more investable, more liquid, and open up to like a wider community, be able to allow people try to invest in some of these projects that really have some very impactful in terms of humanity. That would be a great idea. So the question for me to contemplate at this point is this kind of thinking, is there some traction in using the kind of like a platform, will you be able to provide some kind of fact-based like data to make adjustments?
Oh, you mean like data acquisition? Yeah. There's a lot of that. As are we also talking about IP? IP actually Story the project itself. They're working on tokenizing IP, so that's already being done, and they have quite a bit of traction. Yeah, in Web3.
This is a question for Ali. Virginie from SpineDAO. I'm kind of new in DeSci, like less than 1 year, and DeSci Lab was one of the solution that I identified. I was like, wow, this really like address a huge need. Who are your current user? Is that individual researcher? Is that institution? Is that society that want to create like their own journal?
Right now, there are two core sets. A lot of it is individual researchers. It's researchers who are really, it's really the hyper open science nerds in a lot of ways, who are the people who are looking for a way to put their preprint out and be able to add their data, be able to add as they do research. And then it's also starting to be like journals, societies, communities who are trying to build their own level of curation. So I think this is another part or kind of a layer on top of what we're working on, is that like if you just have information flying about, as much as it's helpful to be able to navigate that, there needs to be a curation layer on top of this permissionless infrastructure where you can put whatever you want. And so that can get really messy, but we have this curation layer, and the curation layer has to be social. It has to be actually based off of trust and rigorous standards of how research works. And the way we're approaching that right now is focusing on communities, academic societies, Diamond Open Access journals, groups like this who have their own criteria, like these are the 3 things that I need in order to know that you can be accessed and let into my journal. And they're the ones doing that curation on top of what we're building right now.
And do you envision also like the use of the platform as an endpoint? So you have like all like the advantage that you're cited, but also like you're referring to preprint. And therefore, like as soon as we talk about preprints, it means that there is something else after, which is like maybe the official publication. What if we just want to use a platform as it is, and not necessarily go toward like the classic way of publishing? Really, like to have a totally disruptive way, like to publish and forget about like the submission to normal journal. Is that something you're open to?
Yeah. I think that's some of the point. So we have, for example, we're working right now with Quantum Biology DAO and what they were excited about doing was actually just publishing their data at the end of their day every day, like almost like a Git, like you end and you publish your data. And they're like, we won't really have a publication associated with any of this information, but we want it to be machine actionable and usable in all of these ways. And so they're creating their own society for the 4 different labs that they have hosted within Quantum Biology DAO and Quantum Biology Institute. And then the only thing that they're going to be publishing is the data and their academic their notes that they put in at the end of their day in the biology lab, and it'll mainly be just a repository for them to make sure that that's accessible to other people. So I think that's the exciting thing about the communities, that each community can really define what the criteria is, and they can forget about academic publishing, they can forget about journals, or they can lean in and be like, this is a better way to publish with all my information to this academic journal. So there's different hypotheses of how to work with it.
So I have one more question for Richard. So I do research at a large research institution, and sometimes we have shared equipment or shared like imaging or like just shared resources within the larger organization. So I was wondering if you could perhaps see that where you have the shared quantum computing within larger organizations but shared between the different subsections or departments.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm hopeful is in the next couple years, hopefully in the next 6 months, is the research institutions that are buying these quantum computers are going to realize they sit idle for a lot of the time, and that they'll then start participating in the network to open this up to other research, essentially open this up to the world and other researchers. So that's kind of the insight, is that the quantum computing needs for a lot of people are, I need to run this calculation maybe a couple times a year. So if this calculation would take a month on a supercomputer, that's one thing. But if it will take an hour on a quantum computer, then where does the other month of hours go, right? So the hope is that as these things start coming online, we'll be able to use them and keep them busy 100% of their operating time. Because one of the things you see, especially with the supercooling architectures, there's a bunch of architectures I didn't get into. With the supercooling, they have to be kept at 0 or near 0 Kelvin, right? And because of that, the cooling has to be running 100% of the time, if they warm up too much, then they have to be recalibrated back down, and that's a 1 month process. So you've suddenly lost a month of compute. So the more we can keep these systems active and operating, the better.
Well, my question is for Ellie about the effects of AI and chatbots on the production and consumption of research and what you've observed.
Yeah, it's a fun conversation that a lot of people have very different opinions on. I think one of the things that I'm most interested in right now is this underlying structure of information, and how we're able to, so another project that's actually in communication and conversation with DeSci Labs is called discourse graphs. And the way they're thinking of it is, as we research, how are we linking the claim to the hypothesis to the evidence that's supporting it? And so you get this micrograph. And the idea that we're trying to figure out is, once you have this micrograph of the relationship between a claim or this evidence and if it's supporting this particular claim, then you can start building up a whole research graph and information. What that does is it means that your AI can make stuff up a lot less. Instead of the AI intaking all of research and all of the context from all the PDFs, and just then needing to fill in the gaps of how everything is related to each other, you have very explicit information about how all this information is related to each other. And then you can really, I think some of the vision is like, if you've documented your process well enough, then the AI can actually build a paper for you and be correct, be right. As opposed to right now what we have, where there's a lot of AI, and we have just increased our volume output multiplied by many X. We have not increased our peer review input, and as a result, we're stuck at this place where you just kind of have a fire hose of information coming at you. A lot of it is very low quality, because there's no ability to check based off of the source information if it's making something up or if it's not making something up. So I think there's that, yeah, and then there's that spiel where I think for me it's really about a lot of the chats are made on pretty bad data, like very, very bad data. They're built off of a lot of the internet, like Reddit threads and Wikipedia. Wikipedia is actually a pretty good source, but many places that are not very good sources. And so I think for me, I'm very interested. This is why I'm so interested in these research graphs, both at the level of claims and granularity.
Do you see the LLMs for research diverging from like the big models in research mode and what we have in the market today?
Currently, not much. I think there should be more direction to that. I just saw a presentation, though, a week ago or so of someone being like, so I tried elicit very systematically many, many times and decided, they literally said it was bullshit. And I was like, and they were like, what is the use of an LLM? What is the use of these AI systems? And it's very targeted, purpose-built things. So I think there's a lot of people starting to pay attention to like, how are we building purpose-built applications that are serving a very niche use, and then improving our research from there, instead of trying to trying to solve the writing process without that underlying data.
Any other questions? Okay,
Yeah, actually, I have a question for the Richard. Yeah, as like you're just telling about the quantum computing, and I do some trading in U.S. stock, and I see there is a really good, great performance for the quantum computing recently. So how do you think this impact the influence investment and for the quantum computing and the cryptography in the future? Yeah.
Yeah, the market, particularly with the results from Google and IBM and Microsoft and D-Wave recently, the market's on fire, right? So I think there's a lot of investment, there's a lot of hype in the space. I do think that we're going to see the quantum computers really start outperforming on a consistent basis on more and more problems over time. And I said at the beginning, I think I said there was roughly a 3-year timeline where we're going to start seeing just absolute quantum supremacy on particular classes of problem. So, but that's kind of disconnected from what's happening in the market, right? It's just, this is what's been happening for the last 10 years, and we're suddenly hit that inflection point where the error correction has gone down past the threshold where we now know for sure we can build these computers. We don't need millions of these qubits doing these like very exotic, potentially unknown error correction to actually start growing these things. And we're seeing that you can do a lot more with a lot fewer qubits than we expected maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, thank you.
No, absolutely.
Because I just buy some quantum computer stocks. So that's yeah, thank you. Any question? Oh.
Oh, I was just going to throw something in. So Stanford has like an online conference in October that's the first conference of AI writing the majority of an academic paper, and then they're having AI also serve as the peer reviewers. So like this is going to be an interesting thing to watch out for, because there are some like research frameworks, and so I think they're working to develop them, and it'll be an interesting conference.
I talk to a lot of AI people because parts of what AI is doing with the inference can be done with quantum computers, right? And one of the most interesting projects I saw recently, which I thought, oh man, that's complete BS at first, was they are creating specially trained models to represent different populations. So you can kind of do a first pass on what is this population going to react to from a social science question perspective. And the results that she had presented were incredible in terms of I would never have expected it to work. But in fact, it does.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Ellie, thank you, Monica, and thank you, Richard, for the really great speech for everyone and discussion. Thank you, guys.